My dad ordered me to take in my sister and her 4 kids, then mocked me as a loser, but one decision I made turned his entire life upside down overnight. When my dad called that night, I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. He rarely called unless there was a favor involved, but this time, the favor was intense. He jumped right in, no small talk. "Jeremy, I need you to pick up Betty. She's at a hotel with the kids, and I can't have her here." That took me by surprise. My sister Betty had been married or at least living with her partner for over a decade with 4 kids. I hadn't seen much of her in recent years, but I thought she was doing well. Apparently not. "Wait, what happened?" I asked. Dad sighed like it was a minor inconvenience. "Her husband kicked her and the kids out. He's got a mistress now, moved her into the house. Betty came here looking for help, but you know how things are. Your stepmother won't have it, and your stepbrother said it's not his problem. I put them in a hotel for the night and gave them cab fare, but I can't keep spending money like that. You're going to have to step up." I sat there, stunned. Betty had no one else to turn to, and Dad was acting like she was a stray dog he couldn't be bothered with. The worst part was how casually he dumped the whole situation on me, like it was just a handoff. "But you're her father," I reminded him. "And you're her brother," he snapped back. "Do you think I haven't tried to help? You know the situation with Maesa, her son, and me. It's not like I can magically make room." I knew the dynamics. My father had married Maesa when I was in college, and it had always been clear where his priorities lay. Betty and I were always treated like afterthoughts. Still, hearing how quickly he dismissed his own daughter and grandchildren made me angry. "Fine," I finally said. "Give me the address of the hotel." He rattled it off like a grocery list. Before hanging up, he added, "Jeremy, I'm glad you're stepping up, but I don't know how you're going to handle all those kids. You're not exactly in the best shape yourself." He laughed, like it was a joke. That laugh echoed in my head as I drove to the hotel. It wasn't funny, not at all. When I got there, Betty was sitting in the lobby with her 4 children huddled around her. They all looked exhausted and frightened. I hadn't seen her in years, but it was like I hardly recognized her. She'd always been vibrant, full of energy. Now she looked worn out, as if life had squeezed every ounce of strength out of her. "Jeremy," she said softly when she saw me, her voice cracking. I could tell she was on the verge of tears. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you out of here." Once we were in the car, Betty began to open up, and what she told me was overwhelming. Her partner, James, had been abusive for years. She didn't go into graphic detail, but the way she spoke said it all. He treated her like a servant, a live-in maid he could knock around whenever he felt like it. She stayed for the children, hoping things would change. They never did. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, he kicked them all out without a second thought when his new girlfriend moved in. No warning, just packed up their stuff and told them to get out. The kids hadn't eaten much all day. I stopped by a 24-hour grocery store, stocked up on food, and then took them to my apartment. It wasn't huge, but it would do for now. I told Betty we'd figure something out. She seemed relieved but also hesitant, as if she didn't want to be a burden. "I appreciate this, Jeremy," she said as I unpacked the groceries. "I know you have your own problems. Betty, you're my sister." I cut her off. "We'll figure it out one step at a time." But deep down, I was already thinking about how temporary this arrangement had to be. I'd planned to move to a smaller, cheaper place in another state soon. This threw a wrench in the works. Still, I didn't want to abandon my sister like Dad had. The first few days were chaotic, but we made it work. The kids were understandably nervous. They didn't know if this was just another temporary stop. I did my best to reassure them, even though inside, I had no idea what the long-term plan was. Then, on the 3rd day, Dad showed up. He didn't call first, he just rang my doorbell like he owned the place. I opened the door to see him and Maesa standing there, all smiles, like this was some kind of family reunion. "Jeremy, we thought we'd come by to check on you," Dad said. "Why didn't you call first?" I asked, already irritated. "Oh, relax, we're family," he said, brushing past me and into the apartment. Maesa followed, her eyes immediately darting around as if she was sizing up the place. Betty froze when she saw them, the children instinctively huddled around her. I could tell by the tension in the room that this wasn't going to go well. "Hey, Betty," Dad greeted her, acting like everything was normal. "How's it going?" "Getting settled in?" Betty mumbled something under her breath, but Dad didn't seem to care. He was already looking around, inspecting my apartment as if to judge how well I was handling his burden. "This place isn't bad, Jeremy," he said, nodding. "Not bad at all. But man, you really went for it, huh? I mean, raising someone else's kids when you don't even have your own yet?" I stared at him, not sure if I'd heard him right. Excuse me? I said, my voice low. You know what I mean, he continued, chuckling. It's just funny, you know? You're 35, no wife, no kids. But hey, you got Betty's bunch now. It's like a trial run or something. Mesa laughed and my jaw clenched. I looked over at Betty. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with embarrassment. Dad, if you're just here to make jokes, you can go, I said, trying to keep my cool. Relax, don't be so sensitive. We're just having a little fun. But he wasn't done. He kept going, making little jabs about how I was finally learning responsibility by taking on Betty's kids. I tried to ignore it, but when he called me a loser for life, something inside me snapped. That's enough, I said sharply. Get out, both of you. Dad blinked, surprised. Jeremy, come on, we're just kidding around. Get out, I stepped closer, and he finally got the message. You're seriously kicking us out over a few jokes? Yes, I said, now. Dad huffed but started for the door, muttering under his breath. Mesa gave me a look but said nothing. As they left, Dad threw a final parting shot over his shoulder. You'll regret this, Jeremy. You think you can be a hero? Let's see how long you can hold out. I slammed the door, angry. Betty looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. This is my fault. No, it's not, I said firmly. Dad's words stuck with me. I wasn't exactly in a good place myself. I'd lost my job last year and was still trying to get back on my feet. The last thing I needed was him poking at every insecurity I had. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. 2 days after I kicked him out, I got a call from a real estate agent. Hi, Mr. Green, the agent said. I wanted to confirm the details of the property sale. The buyer's deposit has been processed and we're ready to close. I frowned. What property sale? The house on Birchwood Drive, your father's residence. I blinked in shock. The house was still legally in my name. My mother had transferred ownership to me before she died, knowing how complicated things could get with Dad and his new wife. I hadn't thought about it in years. Wait, I said, trying to piece it together. You're saying the house is already sold? Yes, sir. We just need your final signature. I hung up and sat there, stunned. Dad had never realized the house wasn't legally his, and now, with a single signature, I could end it all for him and Maisa. The irony wasn't lost on me. He laughed at me for taking care of Betty, called me a failure, and now I had the power to turn his world upside down. I wasn't going to hesitate. The next morning, I went to the real estate office and signed the papers. The house sold for $250,000 less than it was worth, but I didn't care. I wanted them out. When everything was done, I drove over to Dad's house. When he opened the door, he looked confused to see me there. Jeremy, what's going on? I sold the house, I said bluntly. You have 1 week to pack and leave. His face went pale. What? What the hell are you talking about? You heard me. The house was never yours, Dad. Mom left it to me and now it's sold, he stammered. You can't do that. We have nowhere to go. That's not my problem. You made yours very clear the last time you were in my apartment. So now you get to work things out, just like you told Betty. Maisa stormed into the room and demanded to know what was going on. I didn't let her get a word in. If either of you continue to push, I said coldly, I will call the cops. They stood there, stunned into silence. I turned and walked away, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. Dad had tried to make me feel powerless, but the tide had turned. Now it was time to focus on helping Betty build a new life, far away from all of this. It wasn't long before Dad started blowing up my phone. I received a series of texts full of insults and guilt trips. At first, it was the usual, how could you do this to your own family? And you're no son of mine. But then he got nastier, bringing up my mother. Your mother would be ashamed of you, one text said. You'll end up just like her, rotting away, and no one will care. That stung. I immediately blocked his number. A few hours later, Maisa tried to message me, claiming to be the victim in all of this. I blocked her too. I didn't tell Betty about any of this. She was still settling in, trying to get the kids enrolled in school. They were starting to feel more comfortable, which was all I cared about. A few weeks passed without much drama until one night I was home relaxing when I heard my car alarm going off outside. I ran down to the parking lot and found my car with 3 flat tires. No one was around, but I knew exactly who it was, Dad. I didn't have any proof, but it made too much sense. I wasn't going to let it go. I unlocked the car and called him from an alternate number. He answered right away. So you thought slashing my tires would be funny? I asked, getting right to the point. He chuckled darkly. Oh, now you want to talk? You're lucky I didn't do worse. You ruined my life. Meet me in person, I said. You want to talk? Fine, let's talk face to face. There was a pause. Fine. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the coffee shop on 4th Street. I showed up early the next morning. I didn't know what to expect, but I was already nervous. When Dad walked in, he looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. He sat down across from me with his arms crossed. "You owe me," he said flatly. "You sold my house out from under me. Do you know the position that put me in?" "You mean the house that was never yours to begin with?" I shot back. "You freeloaded off something Mom left behind. I don't owe you anything." He laughed bitterly. "Freeloading? That's rich coming from you. You're the one playing house with Betty's kids. You think you're a big shot because you put a roof over their heads? You're still a loser, Jeremy. You always have been." I clenched my fists under the table. "You're seriously going to stand here and play the victim? You abandoned your own daughter and grandchildren. You left them out in the cold, literally, and now you're mad because I won't let you mooch off me anymore?" Dad leaned in, his voice dropping to a deep, threatening tone. "You don't understand the way the world works. People like me survive because we know how to make the hard choices. You'll always be stuck in this fantasy where you think doing the right thing matters. I was done. You can take your hard choices and shove them, Dad. You won't intimidate me anymore." That's when he crossed the line. "You know, if your precious mother hadn't been such a bleeding heart, she might still be alive. But she was weak, just like you." Something inside me snapped. I stood up and swung before I realized what I was doing. My fist connected with his jaw, and he stumbled back, knocking over a table. The whole cafe fell silent. "Jeremy!" the manager yelled. Dad came at me, fists flying. We struggled, knocking over chairs and pushing tables. It wasn't much of a fight, just pure anger and years of pent-up resentment exploding all at once. Someone must have called the cops because they showed up within minutes. We were both dragged outside, handcuffed, and shoved into the back of separate patrol cars. At the station, we sat across from each other in holding cells. Neither of us spoke. Eventually, an officer came over and told us we'd be released with a warning but would have to pay for the damage to the cafe. "You're lucky," the officer said. "Next time you won't get off so easy." Dad said nothing. As we were released, he just looked at me before walking off into the night. I stood there for a while trying to catch my breath. This wasn't over, I knew that much, but I was done playing his games. He'd pushed me too far. After the fight at the cafe, I knew I had to leave town. Dad wasn't going to stop causing problems, and frankly, I was done being around him and his toxic nonsense. It didn't take me long to make up my mind. I packed my bags, gave notice to my landlord, and within a few days, I was on my way to the same city Betty and the kids had moved to. Betty was thrilled when I told her. "You should just stay with us," she offered, sounding hopeful. "The kids would love it, and there's plenty of room now that we're settled in." I appreciated the offer, but I knew myself. As much as I loved my sister and her children, I needed my own space. I'd always been a loner, and I didn't want to impose. So, I found a decent apartment a few blocks from her place. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, and I could afford it. Once I had unpacked my things and settled in, I went over to Betty's place to check on her and the kids. She seemed in good spirits when she opened the door, but I could tell something was bothering her. After the kids ran off to play, she finally let it out. "Dad's been texting me," she said with a sigh. "It's always the same crap, guilt trips and insults. He keeps saying I should crawl back to him because I'm ungrateful and selfish. And then Maisa, she's worse. She keeps sending me these long messages full of curses, telling me I'm ruining her life." I shook my head. Unbelievable. "Did you block them?" I did. Then they started using different numbers. She gave a weary laugh. "It's like they can't handle the fact that I'm no longer under their control." I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I forced myself to stay calm. Betty didn't need any more stress. "Ignore them," I said. "They'll get bored eventually. Let them wallow in their own misery." She nodded, but I could tell it was still weighing on her. Then she hesitated before bringing up something else. "James, my ex, found me on Instagram." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah," she said, shaking her head. I posted a picture of the new place, nothing big, just something about starting over. He saw it and started messaging me. "He's acting like he wants to make things right, says he's ready to come back and be a family again." I felt my jaw tighten. This was the same guy who had thrown her and the kids out like garbage, and now he thought he could just waltz back into their lives. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to get lost," Betty said without hesitation. "I don't want anything to do with him, and the kids, they don't care about him either. He never spent any real time with them. They barely remember what it was like when he was around." "Good," I said. "The last thing you need is for him to screw things up again." We changed the subject and spent the rest of the visit catching up. The kids seemed more relaxed now, and it was great to see them smiling and laughing like kids should. At one point, all 4 of them came up to me as we sat in the living room. Uncle Jeremy, the oldest, Ava, said shyly, "We just wanted to say thank you for everything." The others echoed her. "Thank you, Uncle Jeremy. I wasn't a sentimental guy. I wasn't used to getting emotional about things like this, but damn, this hit me harder than I expected." "You're welcome," I said, feeling a little awkward. But when I saw how sincere they were, I couldn't help myself. I leaned down and hugged them all, even though it's not really my thing. They hugged me tightly back. And for the first time in a long time, I felt good. Like maybe I wasn't just spinning my wheels in life. We spent the rest of the evening hanging out, and I left feeling more optimistic than I had in weeks. Whatever came next, I knew we could handle it. I wasn't going to let anyone tear down what we had started to build, but something told me Dad wasn't done trying to stir up trouble. First of all, things have been pretty stable since I moved closer to my sister Betty. The kids are doing well in school, and Betty is finally starting to feel like she's back in control of her life. The nonsense with my dad and stepmom died down a bit after I blocked them, but I knew they wouldn't stay out of our lives forever. I just didn't expect what happened next. When Betty called me last week, I could tell something was wrong. She was shaken, but not in a scared way, more like she was completely thrown off by something crazy. It turned out that Dad had been involved in another family drama that I didn't even know about. Apparently, he and my stepbrother had some sort of falling out. From what Betty heard through mutual contacts, Dad had put a bunch of money into a failed business venture that was actually my stepbrother's idea. When it crashed, they lost almost everything, including whatever savings they had left. Here's the kicker, Maisa left him. She took what little money she had and moved in with her son. Dad was left with nothing and no one. I wouldn't have known any of this if Dad hadn't shown up at my apartment. Yes, out of nowhere. I almost slammed the door in his face. But I didn't. Part of me wanted to hear what he had to say. He looked defeated. Gone was the arrogance and superiority he always carried with him. He even apologized, which, if you've been following my story, you'll understand how crazy that is. My dad apologized. He said he'd been wrong about a lot of things, that he regretted how he treated Betty and me, and that he realized he'd destroyed his own life by the choices he made. It was strange. I didn't trust him, not completely, but I could tell he meant it. He asked if we could talk sometime, just talk. I told him I'd think about it and closed the door. Since then, I've gone back and forth about what to do. On one hand, this guy has put us through hell. On the other hand, he's at rock bottom, and maybe this is his chance to finally change. I don't know if I want to open that door again, but I haven't made a decision yet. I've talked to Betty about it, and she's as torn as I am. She's not in a rush to forgive him, but she also believes that people deserve a second chance if they earn it. For now, I'm keeping my distance. I won't let him back into our lives until he proves he's serious about being better. If he wants to change, he'll have to show it over time. As for the rest of us, things are going well. Betty and the kids are thriving, and I feel like I've finally found some peace. Life is far from perfect, but for the first time in years, it's going in the right direction. Thanks for reading and for all the support you've given me on this wild ride. I'll update again if there are any more twists and turns, but let's hope the drama is finally over.